In the dark ages, most of life took place out of doors. The planting, herding, cooking, the buying and selling, the weddings, births, deaths, wars. In Finn's version of life in the 20th century, not much had changed. Despite the cold, we walked and fished, lay on the beach and stared at the sunlit clouds or the stars in the night sky, pulled in the traps, messed about in boats. We walked to market with his fish or his bag of crabs and, like the Angles and Saxons, exchanged these commodities for things we didn't have. A hammer, a loaf of bread, a pair of woolen socks. After only 10 days at the hut, I could appreciate the advantages of such a world. A world with nothing extra or unnecessary in it. A cooking pot, a place to sleep, a friend, a fire. What more did I require? I loved the simple richness of our domestic life, the overlapping rhythms, the glancing contacts, the casual seeming but carefully choreographed dance played out through the rooms of a shared house. I even learned to accept Finn's silence for what it was, and not to read it as reproach. It was a lesson that had proved valuable in later life. This acceptance of another person's silence. For I am more of the silence filler sort of person, hopeless on birdwatching expeditions. Despite the effort required to adapt, I became accustomed to whole days, or parts of days during which we barely spoke, just drifted side by side in what was for me a dreamy silence filled with unspoken words that slipped out of my brain and floated up to dissipate in the cold blue sky. I began to pick up some of Finn's jobs, shoveling sand into the latrine, fetching water from the open tank at the far end of the huts. Neither of us commented on my expanded role, but I could read expressions on Finn's face that I might not have noticed before. Slight shifts of the eyes or movements of the corners of the mouth. Pleasure, displeasure, impatience, and very occasionally interest, amusement. Sometimes I believe I could chart the passage of thoughts across his face, though the content of those thoughts remained a mystery to me, as if written in another language. For the rest of my break, we lived together in a boyish ideal, my boyish ideal, of perfect happiness. I became used to the feel and the taste of my own salty skin. My face turned brown from exposure all day to the April sun, and for once in my life, my hair felt thick, textured with salt. There was no mirror in Finn's hut, so I could look at him and imagine myself each day growing taller and slimmer and bolder. It was a lie, in ways I already suspected, and ways I hadn't yet imagined. But it made me happy, and even then I knew that happiness was something in which to plunge headlong and damn the torpedoes. Our time together would have to end. I knew that, and knew also that the pain of leaving this place would be intolerable, like death. In all the years that followed, I have longed, sometimes quite desperately, to ask Finn about those weeks, to ask whether they were happy only for me, whether they remained vivid only in my head. I have wanted to ask whether my presence caused for any change for the better, any change at all. But I couldn't ask. It was once again the supplicant in me, the endlessly repentant me, who wanted somehow to know that it had all been worthwhile, that destruction and ruin wasn't all I brought to the little house by the sea.